Hello and welcome to my study of 100 Charizard EX Pidgeot EX deck lists in the post-rotation Temporal Forces format. I collected 100 of the 100 most recent top 8 Charizard EX Pidgeot EX deck lists from Japanese City League events, and then put them all into a spreadsheet and analyzed the data. I chose Charizard Pidgeot EX because Charizard, as a whole, Charizard Bibarel and Charizard Pidgeot are the two top archetypes right now in the post-rotation Japanese format. And with EUIC and Orlando, and then more post-rotation Temporal Forces tournaments coming up for the West, I know Charizard variants are a deck that a lot of people are going to flock to. So I wanted to look at what cards are being played, at what frequency, and maybe some of the lesser cards, the lesser played cards to consider as well, but only looking at top 8 deck lists from the City Leagues. So there's first place, second place, top 4, and top 8 deck lists throughout the data, and we'll look at a bunch of specific deck lists and then some of my own towards the end of the video. This is a pretty time-consuming task and a pretty time-consuming piece of content to make, so these videos are not going to be edited. It's more so going to be a slideshow presentation like you're seeing here. But if the community and my viewers are interested in this type of content, I'll do it for more decks. If not, I might just make the simple Twitter posts about it with all of the unique cards like I did the other day. And so that Twitter post essentially included this. This is every card that was included in at least one of the deck lists out of the 100 deck list sample size. Now, obviously, this is a lot to take in. There's a lot of cards here, and you can't fit them all into every deck list. These are the extreme outliers of the data set. These cards were only included in 1 out of 100 Charizard Pidgeot deck lists. Looking at some of these, we have the Rabska line. The Rabska stage, the stage 1 Rabska has the ability that's essentially a combination of Jirachi and Manaphy. So it protects your bench from both effects and damage at the same time, but it's on a really low HP stage 1 Pokemon. We have the Toedscruel with Slime Mold Colony. This shuts off things like Superior Energy Retrieval and Pokestop. So that can be very, very strong against Chi and Pal decks and Goldango decks. We have one Pidgeotto that's not commonly seen in pre-rotation lists either. One Radiant Heatran, but that's not really going to be that great because Radiant Charizard's typically going to be played instead. Same thing for Radiant Jirachi. Radiant Charizard will typically be played instead. There was actually 2 lists that played Radiant Greninja, so that's not here since this is only 1 out of 100 or 1% cards. The Ditto that can transform into a different Pokemon. We've got Spiritomb, which is a lot worse now, post-rotation. I'm not going to go over every card here, but Cryptomaniac's Deciphering is a fantastic card, but not needed in this archetype since you have Pidgeot EX that can just search for anything. And then these cards were only included in 2% to 8%, so 2 to 8 of the 100 deck lists. Most of these cards start to make a little more sense than the 1% cards that we saw in the previous slide. Something like a 1/1 Bibarel makes sense because it's a good card. It draws you cards, but most of the time you're not going to need it in this archetype since we are playing Pidgeot EX that can just search for whatever you need. Radiant Greninja, again, a very good card, but not necessarily the most synergistic in the deck that we're playing. Heat Rotom has an attack that does 100 for 2 fire, so I see why you might consider playing that, have a little bit of a better time trading into Pokemon that you can't one-shot, getting some poke damage, or maybe just clearing off a single prize Pokemon with your own single prize attacker. Minior is good against stall decks, because you can have this Pokemon that just continuously can come into the active position with the Far-Flying Meteor ability. Mew EX, a little bit of draw support, also genome hacking to copy attacks. But your Charizard EX is a fantastic attacker. So in Charizard Pidgeot, most of the time, you're just focusing on Charizard being your only attacker. NTV, decent attacker. Needs your opponent's bench to be full to get up to the full 220. It can be good in the early game when your opponent hasn't taken prize cards yet, so your Charizard's Burning Darkness is doing a lot less damage. Cramorant, this is a bit of a weird one, but it can be included in deck lists that are playing Lost Vacuum, Lost City, and Colress's Experiment, which are cards that are seen throughout the deck lists a tiny bit. At the end of the video, I'll have all of the cards seen throughout all 100 deck lists once again, but I'll also show kind of the spectrum of percentages that they're being seen at. Technical Machine Evolution is another card here that I want to mention because it is not nearly as good in Charizard Pidgeot as it is in Charizard Bibarel. So, Technical Machine Evolution, low percentage in these Charizard Pidgeot decks, and it makes sense. Manaphy was found in 99 out of 100 of the decks. The one outlier being the deck list that included that 1/1 line of Rapska. So, uh, just putting this out there, we'll consider Manaphy kind of a 100% card, although it was only in 99 out of the 100 decks because there was that one outlier that played the 1/1 Rapska line instead of Manaphy. Whereas Jirachi's much lower percent than Manaphy. Jirachi was at 47%. So this is a list of every card that was found in 100 out of 100 of the deck lists, aside from Manaphy, of course, which I just mentioned was found in 99 out of 100. So um, we have Manaphy. Of course, we're going to have Pidgey and Pidgeot. We have Charizard EX. Now, the reason there's not Charmander and Charmeleon in this slide is because there's a variety of Charmanders and Charmeleons, and no single Charmander or Charmeleon was included in every one of the 100 lists because there's a variety of them to choose between. Iono, Arven, Boss are seen in all of the deck lists, as well as Ultra Ball, Buddy Pop, and Nest Ball. Rare Candy, of course, in every deck list, Super Rod in every deck list, Fire Energy in every deck list, and although Lumineon and Rotom V are not here, Lumineon V and Rotom V, each of them individually were not included in every deck list, but every deck list included at least Rotom or Lumineon V, and every deck list included Forest Seal Stone, which we see here, because Forest Seal Stone is such an easy card to include because Arven searches for a tool card, and sometimes you're not going to need any of the other tool cards. So Forest Seal Stone was actually the only tool that was included in all 100 deck lists. Now we're adding some cards. So this is a 47 card deck list, including cards that are seen in 100% of deck lists at their most frequent counts. And there are 4 Charmander and at least 1 Charmeleon in every list, but these are the versions and counts with the highest frequency amongst successful deck lists. So like I said, the Charmander and Charmeleon, the versions of them differ, which Charmander to use, which Charmeleon to use, but these are the most frequent counts and versions of them, and every deck list has 4 of some sort of Charmander and at least 1 of some sort of Charmeleon. On the note of Pidgey and Pidgeot, 99 out of 100 of the decks included 2 Pidgeys, and 1 out of 100 deck lists included 3 Pidgeys. So 2 was the most common frequency there. Similar to Iono and Arven. So, uh, Iono and Arven, there was the most frequent number of Iono was 3, the most frequent number of Arven was 3. However, there are some deck lists that include 4 Iono, and less deck lists, but still a sizable amount that include 4 Arven. But yeah, so Iono was the more frequent to be played at 4, but the most common of each was 3, and same for Boss. 3 is the most common frequency for that card as well. And this helps us out a lot because we can see, 4 Ultra Ball, 4 Buddy Pop, and 4 Rare Candy. Those are the most frequent counts of those cards. And we have Nest Ball with the most frequent count of 3. So these are the decks that were successful over the course of all these city leagues. This is 100 deck lists, a nice sample size. So this makes me think, okay, 3 Nest Ball seems like the way to go. 3 Boss's Orders seems like the way to go. Um, 3 Iono, 3 Arven, and then add a fourth of one of them is what I'm seeing pretty frequently as well. So having at least 3 Iono, at least 3 Arven, and then adding a fourth of one of them makes a lot of sense. And then we're going to move on to the next slide. So below are statistically the 13 cards that should be used to round out the 47 card skeleton if we're building the deck list just based on averages, which typically isn't going to give us the most optimal deck list, but it's going to give us an idea of what it looks like, and it's typically going to be pretty close when you average out what a deck list should look like. However, successful lists rarely include all 3 of Maximum Belt, Defiance Belt, and Choice Belt all in the same deck list. So that's kind of what I'm saying here. So on average, Maximum Belt, Defiance Belt, and Choice Belt are all being played a lot, but it's uncommon for all 3 of them to be in the same deck list. So if you combine those on the previous slide, we get this. This is what the optimal 60 card list would look like based on statistical analysis of the sample of 100 top 8 City League Charizard Pidgeot deck lists. However, I want to explore some of the lesser played cards from the dataset and adjust a couple of things. Like I was mentioning, Maximum Belt, Defiance Band, Choice Belt might be overkill having all 3 of them in the deck list. Same for 4 Iono and Roxanne. That might be overkill having 4 Iono and 1 Roxanne as well. So these are some Pokemon to consider adding to the deck. I already talked about Entei, and this was seen in 5 out of 100 deck lists. Next would be Gouging Fire EX, which was seen in 11 out of 100 deck lists. Gouging Fire EX does Blaze Blitz for 260, so this is a fantastic early game attack as well as late game, but really good early because your Charizard EX can't get up to those higher numbers until your opponent takes prize cards. I do think that playing something like Gouging Fire or Entei or Delphox V, I think these make more sense as an early game option when you're not playing Maximum Belt, because when you're playing Maximum Belt, your Charizard EX can still hit for 230 on an EX Pokemon, even if they didn't take any prize cards yet. Then we have Delphox V included in 17% of the top 8 Charizard Pidgeot deck lists. So this is getting to a point where it's almost 20% of the deck lists playing Delphox V. That's pretty high. Delphox V's Magical Fire does 120, 120. Of course, it does send 2 energies to the Lost Zone. That doesn't have to be fire energy, so you can toss like a Jet or a Mist into the Lost Zone. But playing Delphox V or Gouging Fire does make me want to stay at the 7 fire energy instead of going down to 6 if I chose to include one of these. Delphox V can also be really good in the Lugia matchup because of Cinccino. So if they have the Cinccino in the active, a Cinccino on the bench, you can knock out both of their Cinccinos at the same time. Similar, you can knock out 2 Bibarels at the same time if you gust a Bibarel to the active, leave the other on the bench, something like that. Or gust the Bidoof to the active, leave the Bibarel on the bench because Bidoof has the built-in bench protection. So Delphox V is a card I've been thinking about a lot for Charizard. Then also at 17% of the decks is Fluttermane. Fluttermane has the ability Midnight Fluttering. As long as his Pokemon's in the active spot, your opponent's active has no abilities. And then Hex Hurl does 90 and 2 damage to the bench Pokemon. So this ability Midnight Fluttering is namely going to be very good against Lost Zone decks because they can't use Flower Select in the active position if you have Midnight Fluttering out. And then next we see that the 100 HP Charmeleon was seen in 1 out of 5 decks, and Charmander, the promo Charmander with Ember was seen in 37% of decks, but these are a little less impactful since they're just different versions of the cards that we already know are going to be in the deck list. Every deck is going to have at least 4 Charmander and at least 1 Charmeleon. Then onto the ace specs. So the percentages here add up to exactly 100%. All 100 Charizard Pidgeot deck lists played an ace spec. That's not very surprising. The highest percent was 53% playing Maximum Belt for Charizard Pidgeot EX. I think we'll see this differ if we analyzed Charizard Bibarel as well. I think if we looked at a lot of Charizard Bibarel deck lists, we might see Prime Catcher be higher. That's because Pidgeot EX is able to search out the boss's orders when it needs it. It's able to search out the counter catcher when it needs it. So having that prime catcher is a little less impactful for Pidgeot EX, where Pidgeot EX would rather have the power card of Maximum Belt to do 50 more damage and take aggressive knockouts. Hero's Cape was seen in 15%. It gives the Pokemon plus 100 HP. Of course, this can easily be removed via Lost Vacuum. However, Lost Vacuum isn't incredibly popular right now. So yeah, the numbers show that Maximum Belt is the most popular A-Spec in the most successful Charizard Pidgeot deck lists. So looking at the 60 card deck list we made out of the averaged counts, this is what the statistical analysis shows would be the most likely 60 card Charizard deck list to succeed. A couple of cards to consider here. I'm not sure we need all three of the belts and bands there. I'm not sure that we need 4 Iono and 1 Roxanne, and I'm not sure that we need the 7th Fire Energy, especially when we're playing Super Rod. So, essentially what I just said is down here in the text, and top considerations that are on my mind for this deck include Jirachi, Professor's Research, Vitality Band, Delphox V, Professor Toro Scenario, and Extra Counter Catcher. So here is a first place City League deck list. We see that they're playing 2 Rotom V instead of 1 Rotom V and 1 Lumineon. We also see that they're playing 3 Counter Catcher and 3 Boss's Orders. And you can start to see how some of the averaged out counts make a little bit of sense seeing them now in the field. So, although it said that the average successful Charizard deck list would be playing 1 Charmeleon, we see this one playing 2. The average Charizard deck list would be playing 1 Rotom and 1 Lumineon. This one is playing 2 Rotom and no Lumineon. We do see here Maximum Belt along with the Choice Belt, no Vitality and no Defiance. And we also see the 2 Super Rod with 6 Fire Energy here, being something that I'm commonly seeing and something that I agree with. Here's another first place City League deck list. We see the 4-1-3 line of Charizard, just the 1 Charmeleon. We also see the 1-1 Rotom and Lumineon. Going back up to the 7th Fire, we see here Prime Catcher instead of Maximum Belt. And then Defiance Band and Choice Belt to make up for the lack of Maximum Belt in this deck list. And one more first place City League list. This one's playing a 1-1 Bibarel. Like I said, there were a small percentage of Charizard Pidgeot deck lists playing that Bibarel in there as well. They're also playing a Professor Toro Scenario in place of the Switch. So it's a supporter that's being able to essentially switch out your Pokemon just like the Switch would be able to, but it can also be used to pick up a Pokemon, like a Lumineon or a Rotom that you don't want on the bench anymore, or maybe a damaged Charizard in the active, or maybe just something like a Radiant Charizard that got stuck in the active. We also see the Flutter Mane included in this deck list. And finally, this is the deck list that I've settled on for my own personal testing for now after doing all of the analysis. So, looking for consistency, I want to stick with the 4 Iono, and I'm going to try out the Roxanne and see how I like it in this archetype. Also going with the 7th Fire Energy, even though I'm not playing anything that's super energy intensive like the Gouging Fire or Delphox V, I think that this is better served in the deck than something like a third aggressive tool like Vitality Band or Defiance Band, so I'm going to be testing out this deck list that you see on the screen. Like I said, I wanted to show every card one more time. Farseal, Stone, and Fire Energy down there, sneaking in at the bottom. So at the top of this image, this is sorted from 1% starting at the Pidgeotto to 100% ending at the Fire Energy. We'll see everything above the white line that I've drawn here. Everything before Gouging Fire is less than 10% of decks. So every Palpad between Pidgeotto and Palpad is included in 1 to 8% of Charizard Pidgeot deck lists out of the 100 sample size. And then everything between Gouging Fire and Jirachi is 11 to 49%. And then Choice Belt and above is included in 50% or more of the deck lists. And starting at Pidgey and Manaphy is 100 plus. Of course, Manaphy was 99 out of 100, with the Rapska causing that outlier. And just one more time, the skeleton of 47 cards that are seen in 100% of deck lists, including their most frequent counts. If you enjoyed this type of video, please let me know in the comments down below. Also, you can find coupon codes, affiliate links, links to my coaching services, my Twitter, things like that in the description down below. Subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more Pokemon TCG content, and especially let me know if you'd like to see more deck list analysis from Japanese tournaments like this, while we don't have the Western tournaments going on to get this kind of data right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.